Hello and welcome to the land of frogs, snakes, and birds with exceptionally long legs. We do world building here, and today we're talking about the Missouni. It's a river. We'll narrow it down specifically to a 100-mile stretch called the Witchwater. I'm Lewis Nichols. If you haven't suffered through one of my intros before, you should know that I'm fully qualified to talk about all kinds of fantasy RPG topics. You can trust me. Feel free to check me out on Incarnate, Amazon for Kindle, and coming soon, I'll have a few listings on D&D Beyond for unique monsters and such. Just getting into that, but for all I know, you're listening from the future, and I have hundreds of amazing resources on the site. Alright, what about the Missouni? It's a big river, important to the entire watershed of a continent that I may or may not map. It gets wide in the Witchwater, but it's hard to navigate. It's shallow with sandbars that shift over time. It's not unsailable, just difficult. Boats have to be big enough to carry a crew large enough to repel the Witchwater's many threats, but run shallow enough not to drag the bottom. Anything too cheeky is getting stranded. The usual strategy is the small fleet. 2 to 4 river galleys led by multiple small boats usually works out. The small boats lead the way by a few thousand feet, checking depth. The larger ships can keep a good eye out from the crow's nests and carry the soldiers to ward off pretty much any, attack. Let's talk about the Witchwater as a border biome. There are 5 well-developed nations surrounding the Great Swamp. Agulain to the north, the Gnomes of Bergerac to the west. South of them, straddling the Missouni, is the Phocian Confederacy. North and west of them are the Calhir tribes. They're mostly centaur. That leaves the Republic of Nokvaron, which stares across the river at Angelain. As alternatives to trade through the Witchwater, there is an overland option south from the RNV, but the tribals don't like outsiders. You can skirt even farther to the west, and some traders do, but this adds more than a month's travel to destinations served downriver. Going east, the mountains are an obstacle. Then the route passes through wilderness for 50 miles before coming into the Confederacy and back onto the Missouni. Point is, going through the Witchwater is worth it, but that's fun for us because now somebody has to face the terrible threats that rest there. So what does this terrain actually look like? Hopefully, you've been looking at some of the AI-generated examples, but I'm no artist, and AI can only do so much. In the darkest part of the swamp, sight lines are bad. I really feel like that's the one thing monsters, especially aberrations, need to thrive in a given biome. Even the central channel gets so wide, it's barely discernible from swamp. River islands are all over the place, sometimes 3 or 4 abreast. They force boats to pick which passage they want to follow. These often narrow and become choked off by vegetation. Moss-laden trees grow up to 200 feet tall. Their root balls squirm out across the ground, creating tiny biomes within their midst. Birds are everywhere, and they get noisy, making it hard to communicate verbally. At night, when the avians sleep, the insects take over, a constant drone driving men to insanity. Shorter trees make up a whole other realm. These areas of thick forest are the home to monkeys. While not particularly dangerous, they do enjoy hurling stones carried aloft for just that purpose. They are armed and dangerous. On the ground, where there is enough dry land for purchase, the brush is thick and often thorny. Wildcats lurk here, along with the largest forms of boas and anaconda. Snakes are ubiquitous, from rattlers in drier areas to aggressive musicians everywhere else. These all have giant forms present, all capable of eating a full-grown Musicians? Stupid spell check. Make that moccasins. Vines connect one layer of the forest to the next, serving as highways for all forms of forest animals. That is, the ones not out for a meal of flesh and bone themselves. Carnivorous plants are not at all unusual. Some are straightforward, like the strangler vines. Others insidious, like moxon pitcher plants. The man-sized mass of hollowed leaves lures in the unsuspecting with a charming aroma, which has a secondary effect of making everyone else think that it's just fine their companion is being devoured. So why not drain that swamp? At least 3 of the 5 nations surrounding the Witchwater are pretty well developed. There are powerful adventurers among their citizens who could most likely hunt the swamps to extinction. Over time, they might be able to raise the level of the marshlands, effectively making them dry lands. The main reason, however, are the 5 gods of the Witchwater. These are true gods. We won't name them, but they are the gods of nature, weather, diplomacy, wild spaces, and adventure. These guys all want the wilderness to continue its existence. I've always believed that one of the paradoxes of most fantasy is that if the adventuring heroes ever succeed in defeating all the challenges their world has to offer, they lose. The world becomes mundane. These gods, and through them their churches, all have their own reasoning for avoiding the elimination of the Witchwater. For the most part, though, it's enough to simply say that the task is too big to conceive. But underlying that is a deep need for a continued source of adventure and challenge. Centering a campaign around the Witchwater could be a lot of fun. It's a big enough area to keep a low-level party occupied for quite some time. At first level, a group might do bodyguard work, have them responsible for a single passenger on a trade fleet heading downriver. They can fight off a giant fly, thwart an assassination attempt, or have to manage a number of unreasonable requests. They might start with a need to collect a bundle of flowers from shore. Why? Well, because I want them, that's why. You are here to serve me, after all. You're being paid. Get to it. When the flowers are recovered, he demands someone deliver them to another ship, specifically to the second mate whom he wants to woo. The party or party member must succeed a number of skill checks, as the only way to cross is via a rope strung between the ships. Upon delivering the flowers, the mate throws them overboard. I told that idiot no before we left. Don't bother me again. Then the character has to make it back, of course. At third level, the group could be sent into the Witchwater again, this time on foot. Feral lizard men have been raiding a border town, and the party is to scout them out and destroy them if possible. You can make this the beginning of something more elaborate. I might keep it light, though, have them find a crudely drawn map, and show some over-ambitious denizen of the swamp's plans to annex the town and make it part of the Witchwater. Maybe they can even find a pile of shovels collected to dig out the ground and make the drylands wet. Oh, and don't forget, a whole stack of keep-out signs. Fifth level, the party is ready to face some of the many exciting swamp, river, and lake monsters the game has to offer. Black dragons, hydras, hordes of bullywugs. This is a good level to force them deeper into the muck. Maybe based on previous contacts, they are hired to seek out an ancient ruin. It could be a kidnap scenario with an important businessman taken by hags. If you want to keep it interesting, at 7th level and beyond, you're going to have to go in one of two directions. It's either going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight to take on the apex predator of the Witchwater, or you'll need a conspiracy. You can play Strahd's Castle here, or any antisocial big bad boss you like. Let's talk about some of the special conditions that might occur in your Witchwater. I would make the place feel as alien as possible for the characters. Give them a few mysteries they just can't explain. It could be swamp lights that they can never quite catch. Could be howls from the mist they can never identify. You can haunt the Witchwood, but not a boring haunting, like we go beat up the undead. How about a creepy haunting, like, why's dead grandma walking through the fog? You can alter magic by nerfing ranges and AoE, or amp up some spells. Cloud spells might be especially badass here, even unpredictable. Remember, you are the DM. You can do anything. I would make sure that you have your disease rules ready to go. Higher level groups will at least need to invest in some prevention, but you can have particularly dangerous diseases that overcome simple cures, or even advanced techniques. What about the lightning sweats, where a character's temperature soars over just a few hours? At 2 hours in, they're basically useless. At 6 hours, they have to make a save. You can be as vicious as you want to, maybe just a DC 5 to live, but you need to beat a 10 or lose a point of con until you can get your next full rest. Speaking of which, no way do I let full rests be the norm. You're going to need some magical assistance, possibly on the boats most nights, but if there's any interruptions at all, I wouldn't allow it. Alright, last major subject. I'm not big on random encounters, but you can throw in a few things, call them travel events. Here's some ideas. Number 1. The party realizes they've bedded down in the wrong spot. They wake up to discover they've been infested by anything from leeches to ants, maybe mosquitoes. Everyone suffers a check for disease and a level of exhaustion. Number 2. The fungal bloom. Somebody in the group gets too close to the wrong plant and it spews a cloud of spores out for about a 20-foot radius. For every round spent in the area, saves will be made. A failure equals a level of exhaustion. 2 days later, the party member notices that a small vine has emerged from under his skin and now he's growing plants. Number 3. Tree fall. A dead giant of a tree collapses near the party, stirring up the madness of the jungle. Birds, bats, insects, pollen, and a hail of dead, shattered wood rain down on the party. Number 4. It's just some rain. A 4-day non-stop deluge swells the swamp. Finding dry ground is getting rough, and the party is in danger of losing their valuables in the maelstrom. Like anything I present on this channel, you can modify at will. The point is, the swamp doesn't have to be dangerous just because of monsters. Now there are alternatives to my proposal. What if the government of the Republic of Nokvaron was actually a brutal dictatorship? Political persecution has driven hundreds into the swamp to escape imprisonment or worse. But they can't just start farming. Even though Agulane doesn't want to get involved, they have become a favorite target of these swamp refugees raiding for food. It's a political crisis, and a nearly impossible one to deal with without a regime change in this so-called republic. Alright, we're going long, but just one more. Alternative number 2. You can make the gnomes the bad guys. The Bergerac Mountains hide a secret, one of compulsive behavior and an utter lack of ethical restraint. The gnomes have become obsessed with taming the swamp, and they are doing so by building war machines. The party becomes aware when a ship in the fleet they have been escorting is attacked by a giant mechanical beast. There is nothing to be done, as the galley at the end of the formation is torn asunder by the great beast. The gnomes are implicated, but manage to divert attention. There is a whole story arc with false leads and purple herrings. Red herrings? Whatever. Unfortunately, that's all I have for now. You can fill in the details to fit your campaign. There's just too many cool things to talk about. I hope you all have a great weekend full of fun and games. This is probably going up on a Friday morning, almost definitely now. It seems to work out the best. I am very glad you all stopped by. Hit that like button, comment, you know what to do. Did I mention this all really helps? You matter to the world, all of you. See you next time. Cheers.